week's Parsha is Parshat Ekev. And if we'll notice, right at the very beginning, it appears, and of course, as I've always said in the past, this seems to be the essential problem of what is considered as Jewish tragedy for 2,000 years. You have it right here in this one sentence. And it says the following: and it shall be, while if you listen, et hamishpatim ha'eleh, if you listen to these rules, ushmartem, and you'll observe them, vashitem otam, v'shamar Hashem Elokecha lecha et habrit v'et hachesed asher nishba la'avatecha. If you listen to all of these rules and you observe them, then God in turn will also treat you in a similar manner, which indicates to all of us that you've got to listen to God. If you don't listen to God, then of course God then punishes you. And then it goes on to say all of the benefits that will accrue because you listen to God. But I'd like to, before we get into that subject, because this entire parsha keeps repeating, remember, and do not forget. The whole parsha. It's more than on one occasion. I think it's about seven times that this week's parsha keeps reminding us that if lo tira mehem zachor tiskor, remember, and then it says lo tishkach, do not forget. And according to the Zohar, we get an indication of what this whole idea here seems to imply, because on the surface we assume that this is where religion began. In other words, if you observe, then God treats you correctly. If you don't observe, then of course you're punished. This idea that the idea of reward and punishment, of course, does not always necessarily apply to all of us. The first indication should have been, but somehow we always seem to forget that one aspect, is that during the time of the destruction, you're all familiar with what the Talmud says, and that is that because of non-observance, that's why the temple was destroyed, and that is never mentioned. The only aspect that relates to the destruction of the temple seems to be connected with the idea that Jews didn't learn how to deal with each other. In fact, they hated each other. And it does not revolve around the idea of listening to the mitzvot or doing the mitzvot. The Torah says right at the very beginning of this parsha, if you will, kitoma bilvavcha rabim hagoyim ha'ela mimena echa uchal lahorisham, and if you'll think in your hearts that the goyim, and we're talking here about conquering the land of Israel, if you think that there will be in such great numbers, and you will say, how can I inherit this land? God says, don't worry. Just as I've done to the Egyptians, so can I do to the to these people who inhabit the land of Israel. So it seems from the Torah a little contradictory to what appears in the Talmud. The Zohar begins off this week's Parsha, very strange Zohar. It says the following. It says here, "V'achalta v'savata v'rachta et Hashem Elokecha." If you listen, you will eat, you will be satiated, and you should also bless God. It says the Zohar, "Mitzvah zuhi levarech et HaKadosh Baruch Hu al kol ma she'achal v'shata v'nena b'olam hazeh." That's the reason that one must always make a blessing on whatever he has eaten or drunk or enjoyed in this world. Zohar says that if someone doesn't make a blessing, he's considered as if he had stolen from God. And the obvious question that Rabbi Ashlag raised was, for whom did God create this, if not for we human beings to enjoy, to eat, to drink? Why did he create it? He certainly doesn't have to eat and certainly doesn't have to drink for himself. So he created it for us. Why do we in turn have to eat, have to make a blessing before we eat or drink? Not only that, he says, it is then considered as if we had robbed from God. We had robbed from God. But the total intention here of God is to satisfy us, to provide us with food and sustenance. In fact, we don't even have a hand in the creation of the fruits and the vegetables, trees. It's there. Farmer plants the seeds with effort or without effort, but certainly his effort doesn't go beyond planting the seed. Following the seed, he hopes there'll be water, or he can have drainage or whatever other system to water the plants, but that's all he's got to do. Sometimes maybe he has to prepare the fields. Sometimes even where the fields are very, like in the Nile Valley or in the Mississippi Valley, there is just naturally very fertile land for the fruits or vegetables to grow. But that's about it. There's nothing more, and that obviously is because God himself felt, for whatever reasons, and the reasons you have learned in the classes, is because he wants to lahetiv et anivrav. He wants to benefit those creatures that he created. He created the need in us that we must eat. It was he that created our desires. It was he who created our needs. And now that he provides us with the sustenance so that we can sustain ourselves. For if there was no food, then we could not sustain ourselves. There would have not been any purpose in creation to begin with. And furthermore, he says it's considered as if we have stolen. We have stolen. The same idea that if we listen to God, we follow his rules and commandments, things will be wonderful. If we do not follow his rules, then he punishes us. Again, we were created for what reason? Leitiv l'nivra'av, so that we can enjoy. Of course, there is the aspect of bread of shame. But it says you must listen to his mitzvot. Bread of shame, I can understand. We have to work for it. As we said, what entails here, working for it. If I make a blessing, I work for it. How much effort is required to make a blessing? In fact, like I've always said, people feel, and this is the way it's been going on for many thousands of years, is the fact that when one becomes an observant Jew, observing all of the mitzvot, he's finally arrived. Then we have to go back to the Talmud. They had all arrived. Certainly 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva had arrived and achieved the objective of fulfilling all of the precepts, except there was one thing wrong. They couldn't tolerate each other, couldn't get along with each other. Other than that, everything was wonderful. They were fulfilling all of the precepts. And therefore, Rabbi Ashlag, which is not usual for him in the Zohar, explains just what is referred to here as robbing of the Creator. We've taken away, we haven't made a blessing, and therefore we're considered to be robbers of his food. And the Zohar explains, שהברachot שאדם מברך את הקדוש ברוך הוא באים להמשיך חיים ממקור החיים. That the blessings that we make, this is the answer of the, I should say, the continuation of the Zohar, where in one point he's saying if we don't make the brachot, we're stealing. In the second part he says, because we are drawing to ourselves from the well of life, and to provide l'shmo hakadosh shel hakadosh baruch hu ulaharik alav me'oto shemen elyon. Seems to be now another twist. That the reasons for the blessings is not that we should not be considered as robbers, but the blessing seems to be the channeling or the vehicle by which we receive his blessings. In other words, the blessing by within itself is not thank you to God, but through the structure of the blessing, it is the method by which we receive the blessing. And it almost seems to contradict the idea that we're robbing, and that Zohar makes that very clear. He does say that. Gozel aviv v'imo. That if we do not make the bracha, we are considered a gazlan, as robbing God. We're eating. The idea we're eating without having said thank you. And then within the same context of this Zohar, he says the reason for the blessing is so that we can draw down the blessings. We can draw down the blessings. What blessings are we drawing down? We're eating the food. Wonderful. We have sustenance. The body can continue to exist. And for what purpose do we need the bracha? Zohar is not very clear, and therefore, in one of the rare occasions, does Rabbi Ashla go on to add the addition of which he calls the Marot HaSulam. Here, nowhere else, except in Bereshit, where we come to some very difficult passages. But over here is one other instance where Rabbi Ashlag adds the Marot HaSulam. Marot could be either the illumination or the vision of the latter. Since his interpretation was named HaSulam, the ladder, this is called Marot HaSulam, to illuminate the ladder. Meaning, he felt that it was not sufficient as to just what the Zohar was relating to when he discussed this particular parsha. And he says like this, Kol hana'a she'adam oseh mekabel me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, im mevarech aleh, if he blesses on her. Already Rabbi Ashlag is not discussing making a blessing to the Creator. He's talking about making a blessing on the food. Making a blessing on the food. Not blessing or thanking God for what He had given. Hu malo oto ana'a im kavanot habracha lebchinat man el hamalchut. What the individual is doing is taking this pleasure through this blessing on the fruit, and he raises it with this kavanah, with this meditation of the blessing, to a bchina of man el hamalchut. Those of you not familiar, man is an abbreviation of Mayan Nukvan, female waters. El hamalchut. What in turn this individual who is making this blessing is accomplishing is raising this pleasure as Mayan Nukvan. Mayan Nukvan, there's Mayan Duchrin and Mayan Nukvin. Mayan Duchrin is like water coming from above. It's rainwater. Then we have water that comes from below. That is referred to, like a well, as Mayan Nukvin, female waters. Why is one referred to as Duchrin, the male waters, and one is referred to as female waters? These are concealed concepts, concealed words, I should say, which coded the way they are, provide us with some insight into the operation of the world that we cannot see visually. The world that exists out there, but that we haven't got the slightest idea. And I'm not referring to the world of atoms, which again are physical entities, despite the fact that we cannot see them, but it's no different than radio waves. But if we can picture what Rabbi Ashlag is trying to say in the words of Mayan Nukvin, you have the concept of television. How do you have television? Certainly did Rabbi Ashlag. Yes, he was alive when television was just in its infancy, but I think he wrote this before we all understood that there was a concept called television. But what is television? Have we ever stopped for a moment to imagine the concept behind television? That because of this concept, our complete consciousness concerning things around us would change immediately. But unfortunately, we take things as they appear, as new inventions, new ideas, etc. But in effect, to state it simply as I can, there's a studio somewhere, and there's an individual. How does this individual reach your home? And when this individual reaches our homes, we see him in the exact form as he appears at the station. In no way is it any different. If he's sitting around with flowers, you'll see the flowers. If he's talking with another individual, you'll in fact see that individual too. Everything. What happens? How does this image transfer into our own homes. How does it happen? How many of us have begun to think, how does that happen? It's a miracle, but how does it happen? What is actually taking place, if you speak to a scientist, although he doesn't understand how something like that takes place, he does not understand it. It's just a fact. Same way as he doesn't understand why all planets revolve around the sun. I mean, what would be wrong if the sun revolved around all other planets? Would it make any difference to any of us here? Sun is the sun. It furnishes us with heat. It furnishes us with other beneficence, whatever those beneficences are. Although we're almost convinced that the sun can be harmful. The rays of the sun, not even understanding that it is not the rays that are harmful. Although some people think it's the rays, and therefore, buy all that cream and keep the rays out. What is happening is this individual, remember, how is the television program reaching your home? Certainly not the individual. And we're not squeezing him into these radio waves or television waves, or if it's cable through these wires. I mean, we're just too big to fit into a wire. So what's really happening? We are becoming we become dematerialized. The material of ourselves is compressed. Well, how much can we be depressed? Well, if you remember, and I'm sure you've heard about this in the classes, this table, what does it consist of? This table, what does it consist of? Atoms. Why can't my hand go through? Not because of the wood. Because of the atoms. What does an atom consist of? A nucleus, an empty space. The nucleus, compared to the space that is occupied by the atom, do you know the relationship? It's like an ant in a football field. That means everything is really space. If the physical is just maybe 1/99th, as they try to explain it, 1/99th, and then the rest of us, the 99% are atoms, and that is, if we don't occupy, and we certainly do not occupy the space of a ball field, then it is so minuscule that we ourselves, if we look at ourselves, we observe ourselves, why we'd like to see ourselves as this figure, but in actuality, we're not. We're such a minute, less than an ant. We might almost say we do not exist. And consequently, it is no longer difficult to understand how does this person become transformed, transported into the home of the individual who wants to view this particular program. Because we are not what we think we are. We are not the size that we are. Even the physical body undergoing all of the different transformations. As you know, the proteins we were born with no longer exist. Everything within us has been regenerated. Nothing. That at age 10 or age 30 is of the same material that we were born with. We are someone totally different physically than what we were when we were first born. Then who are we? What are we? Nothing more than consciousness. Nothing more than consciousness. This table is nothing more than consciousness. The food that we eat, nothing more than consciousness. There is no other way for a thinking individual. That is, if you don't want to be a thinking individual, then you just tune in your television program and that's it. But when you begin to just think for a moment, which is unfortunately what we very rarely do, think for a moment as to how, if we appeared on television, there we would be beaming, not only within the United States, we could be beamed all across the world, all around the world. We are beamed in. A new word, but it's not a new word. We shall shortly understand how Rabbi Ashlag interprets this seemingly religious concept of Ekev. Make the leper say the blessings, listen to God. And right here at the very beginning, Rabbi Ashlag understands that it does not relate to the superficial translation of this particular section. What is being beamed? The physical person? What is the physical person? What does he represent? Nothing more than consciousness. Nothing more than consciousness, then how come we all look different? If we're not speaking now in a material sense, then how do we all look different? Why are we all different? And the answer is, what comes first? The action or the thought preceding the action? What comes first? We call someone an idiot if he doesn't think about what he's doing. We call him an idiot. If you don't think before. Now, we can change our consciousness. Life would become a lot easier. And what do I mean by changing our consciousness? To understand just what's going on. Because we are already programmed that nothing but what we observe in the physical world is what really exists. And yet, science has so diffused and removed this physicality down into the essence, which is atoms, which we know again refers to something of a non-physical nature called consciousness. Our consciousness precedes what we are, is our consciousness. Does anyone say he's beautiful, therefore he's good, as Rabbi Ashok says in his 10 luminous emanations? Is someone who looks ugly an evil man? We understand one doesn't relate to the other. That's correct. That's correct. What we can say is the consciousness which precedes the corporeal, the physical manifestation that we observe, must of necessity be comprised of something that we refer to as consciousness. So everything around us is not of a physical nature. When we're talking about making a blessing on fruits or whatever we drink, says Rabbi Ashlag at the very beginning, we are not discussing, thank you for giving me this food. On the contrary, On the contrary. What we are taking, says Rabbi Ashlan, we are mala oto hana'ah, the pleasure that we receive, nothing to do with the fact that I have taken from the Creator food, and we asked. I didn't ask the Creator to create me, nor did I ask the Creator to create food that is required for my sustenance. Yes, now that I'm alive, now that He created me, but if you recall again, I want to repeat it, that the reason that we were created so as to provide an opportunity for the Creator to be able to share. And we were the receptacles. We were the instruments by which He could now be considered as having shared. Because if you want to share something and there isn't anyone with whom you can share it, then it's not considered sharing. Consequently, He created us so that He in turn can benefit from His creation. And therefore, He provides us with the sustenance. Because again, the sustenance comes in a form by which we can receive that which He wants to share with us. Sustenance. Then why would we have to make this blessing? When in essence, all that is involved is the idea that He wants us to be there. To be there. To be there. So that we can receive His sustenance. So that we can make manifest the original thought of creation, which was to provide enjoyment to something, that He can extend the tov, the goodness, the beneficence that is within Him. And as Rabbi Ashlag also says, it is the natural inclination of someone that is completely filled with good to want to extend that good. Therefore, this idea of making blessings, thanking the Creator, does not exist, and is not the interpretation of what Parshat Ekev seems to imply. The whole Parsha is discussing that if you listen to my rules, I will in turn reward you. If you don't listen, I will not reward you. And right at the outset, says Rabbi Ashlag, this is not the concept that this particular Parsha wants to convey. What is happening here, says Rabbi Ashlag, that when we eat, when we drink, there is a pleasure. We do experience a pleasure. We do experience something as we eat. We do not eat that food which we do not enjoy. In other words, everything that God created, actually we should eat. We should not decide whether we enjoy it or not. After all, it is the intent of the Creator to share. So why are we distinguishing between one and another? Some of us like bananas, some of us like apples. We should be eating everything, because if He created these various fruits and vegetables, then if we are to follow the edict of the Creator, we must eat everything. Why are we even permitted to choose which foods? We should be eating everything if this is the reason He created the food. And the answer is no. The answer is no. We are, first of all, to enjoy. We are to enjoy that which we created. We are to enjoy it. Why are we to enjoy it? Why do we have to enjoy it? Because if you don't enjoy it, in fact, that is even the halakha, not to eat something, not to make a blessing over something that you don't enjoy. You must enjoy. That means if you go to synagogue and you don't enjoy it, it's like you've heard from me many a time. When I had someone, very dear friend of ours, called me up and said, my son doesn't want to go with me to the synagogue on Yom Kippur. And the rest of the year he understood, because he didn't go, so he understood but at least on Yom Kippur. I said, so put Robbie on the phone. Robbie gets on the phone. I said, Robbie, what would you rather do? He says, you know, Rav, what I would rather do? I'd rather go play golf. I said, go play golf. He gets back on the phone. He said, I didn't need you for that. I thought you were going to tell him to go to the synagogue. It's Yom Kippur. How do you tell him to go? And I did tell him to go play golf. Because right here at this very beginning, where the idea, the central idea of religion is right here in this week's Parsha. The whole idea of where religion originates. And you know, don't worry, if you observe, you can be in a concentration camp, God's going to take care of you. Don't worry about it. It's all you got to do. Did it ever happen? Never. Never. It didn't happen. From the time of the destruction. It didn't happen from the time when the Jews were standing on Mount Sinai. It didn't happen. And why will it happen? And it will never happen. Because our consciousness has been so programmed so that we do not understand, like we won't understand how a human figure is transported to the home of individuals seeking to view a particular channel. Because we're not involved with these ideas of listening, not listening, and it's that cut and dry. We have not yet, and now we are, but we have not yet reached the essential idea of what we're doing here. Why do we have to know what we're doing here? Why do I have to know? Because it pertains to my consciousness. You've learned, why are we here? Because in the Ein Sof, I restricted because of bread of shame. I am the central figure here. Whatever I do is because God considered me to be the central figure. He is not the central figure. Oh, wait a second. God is not the most important aspect. Yeah, well, there's God and there's me. Well, who's more important? If I asked anybody in the whole world, who's more important, God or me? Oh, when you're boiling it down to that kind of a question, who's more important? Who said that is an essential question? Who said there is a question of who is important or who is less important, who is more important? Who is strong or who is less? And if you listen to him, yes. If you don't listen to him, and then obviously he is the ruler of the world. And all of these different concepts have emerged, keeping us away from the central idea of what we're doing here. One idea, and there's only one idea as to why we are here. Because we chose to be here, not God. It was not God's intent that we be here. It was not God's intent that we suffer here. We decided as to where we will be. We decide where we're born. We decide what we eat. We decide whatever we do. We decide. It has nothing to do with the laws of God telling you what you must do. Because everything that is included in this Pasha revolves around you as an individual achieving whatever the objective is. You as an individual, not the rules of following the laws of God. That wasn't the essential idea. Never was and never will be. It evolves around Hana'ah. It revolves around you achieving an objective. Having the pleasure of having achieved that which we came here for, which I came here for, which you came here for. We came here to remove bread of shame. Let's never forget that. We did not come because God thrust us into this world and said, now go fend for yourself. Those who are lucky escape from ill health. Those who are unfortunate will not, etc. This is not what it's about. This, I have even gone to the extreme as to say, is satanic consciousness and reasoning. The whole idea of religion, as we understand it, has been his ploy, because this was not the essential reason as to why we're here. We did not come into this world to be subservient to the Creator. We did not come into this world so that the Creator can create some set of laws that we must adhere to. This was not the intent. The Ari makes that very clear. So if I'm an atheist, and if I'm a non-believer, so is the Ari, because the Ari says the only reason we are here, as the Zohar says as well, to remove bread of shame, that we shall feel completely at ease. What is pleasure? You feel at ease. You feel good. To feel good. Because in the Ein Sof, we did not feel good. We did not feel good. And so everything that followed after that thought that we did not feel good must evolve around that central thing. If you don't feel good, then you haven't accomplished the reason for being here. Feeling good. Well, that's a desire to receive for the self alone. We'll deal with that. Yes, bread of shame. That's why it does not merely evolve around the idea that I just want to feel good. But by virtue of bread of shame, does not mean that we lose the essential feature as to why we are here. We are here again to feel complete that which we could not feel in the Ein Sof. Again, the central idea of being here was not the Creator's idea, as you learn in Kabbalah, but the idea that we wanted to feel something. We wanted to achieve a completeness. That's what pleasure is all about. Pleasure just doesn't mean, as we think it does, just sitting back and eating all day and get indigestion. Watching a movie all day, get bored. I mean, all of the things that we think we tend to associate with greed has nothing to do with greed. Greed ultimately does what? Someone has a lot of money. He's greedy, won't share with it. What happens to him? Doesn't enjoy his money. Literally doesn't enjoy it. Again, the idea of greed is not by and within itself wrong. What's wrong with greed is you do not achieve the central idea of hana'ah, of completeness. Not that greed, if you could achieve, if it was possible, to eat all day, drink all day, not have to worry about paying bills and so on, that would be the most wonderful. If that was truly an objective that we can say we have achieved, the answer is that was the central idea. But, unfortunately, we get bored. Unfortunately, we're not satisfied no matter what we have. We're not satisfied. So what is the problem? The problem is we're not satisfied. Not that greed is by and within itself bad. Not that concerning ourselves with ourselves, after all. We go back to the idea that was raised at the beginning. God, who asked you to create me? God, who asked you to create the food? For your pleasure. What did we want? We wanted to feel the same fulfillment, nothing more. We wanted to achieve that same fulfillment of accomplishment. But again, was it the accomplishment? The removal of bread of shame, as we term it in Kabbalistic terminology? Or the idea that what I'm doing, there is pleasure. Just as within the Creator. What was the essential feature again for creating this world, for creating human beings? That he should have the pleasure of giving. Again, there was one central idea. The Creator wanted the pleasure of sharing. We are here for pleasure and no other reason. Now we have problems. Well, pleasure means sitting on the beach all day. Okay, God says sit on the beach all year. What'll happen? I don't want to sit on the beach. Too boring for me. Oh, okay, then we'll have to find something else. Somehow, for whatever reason, whatever we're looking for, whatever we believe will satisfy us, a new car, wonderful. Nothing wrong if it satisfies you. Yes, but only up until a point. Do you want to sit in the car all day? No. Who wants to do that? Again, the problem is not one of religiosity. The problem is not a question of conforming to rules. Am I therefore concluding that we do not have to listen to the rules? Is those rules that we have interpreted as rules is the methodology by which I shall never be bored, I shall never feel bread of shame, I shall only experience 24 hours a day, every single minute, hana'ah. Buying a car and sitting in it all day? No. Sitting on the beach all day? No. Having the best prepared food by the best chef in the world? Is that enough to do it? No. Then what is there? What can we have? Or what methodology is there that will give us 24 hours a day of anah? But let me tell you, if this is not the central idea in your consciousness, but you're a little hung up on religion, or whatever else you're hung up into, and you do not understand the main feature of why we're here, then these rules do not apply for you. Because as we began off in the very beginning by saying that the essential feature here is consciousness. Consciousness. Where do you feel good? Ask your body, how do you feel? Never do that. Who do you ask? You ask your eyes that you've seen a wonderful movie. Well, how do you feel now, eyes? No. What are we talking about? Nothing more than just consciousness. But we get hung up in hands, feet, events, circumstances, problems, and so on. And these become the central ideas, forgetting that there is nothing more to us, nothing more to us. The events around us are nothing more than our consciousness. This is supported by science. I feel good in saying that. And Rabbi Ashlag says it in that one word. And we'll realize the methodology, which is what all that is stated in this week's Parsha refers to. There is nothing more to it. Events, tragic events, even cancer. Even cancer is nothing more than a consciousness that relates to punishment, a consciousness that relates to the body, which is the essential feature, But if we would change our consciousness, that we understand the body is not even an ant in a football field, because we do not occupy a football field. The nucleus, remember, the physical part of the atom is the size of an ant when you compare it to a ball field. And we are not as large as a ball field. So how much of our physical nucleus are we discussing? The head of a needle? Not even discussing that. If you can relate the size of an ant to a ball field, that is our physical essence. How much is that? Almost nothing. I don't even know whether in real physical terms we can measure that. Yes, we can say we are 1/1,000,000th of an inch. Well, do any of us grasp the idea that our physical size is 1/1,000,000th of an inch? Yeah, we can say that mathematically. Yes, that may be correct. But what does that mean to us? 1/1,000,000th of an inch. What does it mean? That there is an entity called the physical body? Is it easy? No. Because Satan tells you there's rules. You got to do the mitzvah. You do the mitzvah. What does the mitzvah involve? The physicality. It involves eating, making a blessing, eating, discussion, to verbalize, words, all in a physical sense. When the central idea is not evolving and does not relate and does not even deal with anything that has or is contained within the physical framework that we unfortunately exist. Therefore there's cancer, therefore there's troubles. So when do we start? We have to start now. If we don't start, after all, someone's in a concentration camp. And what science knows today, beam yourself out of the concentration camp. How big are you? You can't put yourself into, isn't it done? Put yourself into a wire and go to the United States. What are you going to hang out there for? Beam yourself in anywhere you want to go. Do we beam ourselves into anywhere we want to go? Do we do it? How many times have you been to some resort where you really enjoyed yourself, whatever that means? You come home to the physical environment, which we're usually not happy with. Do you beam yourself back to where you were? How difficult is that? Well, that's only daydreaming. But we just got through saying, what do you mean you're daydreaming? You mean you're really here? As long as you're really here, then you cannot get there. Then you are creating a consciousness of what? Not of thought, a consciousness of the physical being. It's a whole, but I'm not the originator. When I say, not even Rabbi Ashlag. Today, but unfortunately it took until the 20th century for us to begin to understand these concepts, which have been stated in the Zohar long before science came into as something that is going to explain away for us this universe. Do we have the power to dematerialize ourselves? Do we have the power? You don't even need the power. We just got through saying, what is our material makeup? How much is it? It's already dematerialized before we begin. Science is only explaining it for us. The nucleus, the atom, we're like less than the ant. It's already explained for us. It doesn't even require that we dematerialize ourselves. We can be wherever we want to be. People felt our presence. That's what we learned from Avram Avinu. What did we learn from Avram Avinu? When he went, when the two angels came to Lot to save him because God was going to destroy Sodom. Do you remember the story? It's mentioned in The Wheels of a Soul. And the rule in Sodom and Amorah was that if anyone extended any generosity would be put to death. There was a law against extending generosity in whatever form. And only the day before, Lot's daughter extended generosity, and what was her punishment? Not just simple death, but she was bathed in honey, placed on top of the roof, and the bees. Terrible, right? Terrible. And the bees devoured her completely. The next day come these two spies or two angels and asking Lot to please permit or extend hospitality so that they can spend the night with him. You think Lot was going to agree? I mean, after having an experience with his own daughter the day before? And what does the Torah say? That the Zohar says, Avram appeared before him. Lot would have never thought. But Avram beamed into Lot, because Avram at the time was in Israel, as it is stated. The angels just came from Avram. But says the Zohar, Avram appeared to Lot. How did he appear? How did he appear? He beamed himself in. Oh, only Avram could do that. Oh, only... But television beams the individual in. It does not beam in the physical person. What does it beam in? Think about it. Think. What happens? The person is beamed into your living room. Anyone can enter your living room if you permit him. Now, is the only way that you permit him is by tuning in? What about your electrical outlets? Everything today. What's going on in science? We are all invaded, whether you know it or not. All of us are being invaded by subliminal methodology. All of us. All of us. Right into your own home. You have a telephone? Right in. Anybody can come into your home if they want to. Because we are living in this age to bring us closer to the reality, and also the benefit of the age of Aquarius, to permit us to let go of this physicality. It's a problem. Well, who wouldn't want to travel all around the world just by beaming in? What do I have to go travel to the Riviera today? I had a call from there for about something. Oh, and there are millions of people along the Riviera. You know how crowded it is? What kind of a vacation? But everybody goes there, so everybody goes. But can you imagine beaming into the Riviera and not sitting there, and sitting on the beach all by yourself because you've dematerialized all the other people? But then again, you might even wind up in a mental institution if you think that way. But I'm not saying anything different than what science says. The only difference that I've always said is Einstein, when he taught these ideas about dematerialize. The only problem was that when Einstein came home from the course he had just given, and what we're discussing here is when he had forgotten his key and wanted to get into the house, all he had to do was tell the door, dematerialize yourself, right? And he could walk through the door. After all, the space that the door occupied, 99 and 9/10% was empty space. Could you walk through this space? That's the door. Door is empty space. 99% of the door is empty space. Why couldn't he just walk through the door? From the theory to the practical. Because he did not believe that he could dematerialize. But today there are every indication from science. Star Trek didn't start so we have a program that would be very enjoyable, that one can beam himself into anywhere, stand under the light. But that was beautiful. In Star Trek, I think he had to stand first under the light. That's true, my friends. Connect with the light, and you can beam yourself in anywhere. Even that idea, why did it have to be that idea? Right? Why did it have to be under a light? They had no choice in that. All to indicate to us, and we have to begin changing our consciousness. Now, getting back to what Rabbi Ashok said here about brachot, doing all the wonderful things that God commands of us. He says, because when you do an action, why are you doing it? Why are you eating? Some people eat for the sake of eating. Okay. Not for the pleasure of getting out of eating, but the pleasure of just eating. But that's also a pleasure. How we define the pleasure of eating is unimportant. Is there pleasure, or are you eating and you have no pleasure? If he has no pleasure out of eating, then we know that the man has a problem. That he has to gain weight. A weight because he's not eating out of pleasure. It's like sitting all day in the car, which he enjoys the car. He needs a car to travel with, but to sit all day in the car, that would not give him the pleasure that would fulfill him. He'd become bored, and therefore he doesn't do that. You don't just eat, but if you eat, there should be pleasure. There should be pleasure. Now, with this pleasure, says Rabbi Ashok, we take this pleasure. Now, what is pleasure? What is pleasure? Is it a physical entity? Of course not. It's consciousness. Somewhere inside, we feel good. Can you define it physically? Of course not. What Rabbi Ashok says, with the kavanah of the bracha, how do I beam? We don't know yet why. How do I beam that pleasure? And I have to beam that pleasure somewhere. Meaning, how do I beam me? Somewhere. And he's going to describe for us where we've got to beam this pleasure. We've got to beam this pleasure. How? How do you do the beaming? Star Trek, it didn't explain it. Just went under the light, and he comes out somewhere else. How did it happen? They didn't go into that. They don't know how it happens. We don't know yet how to beam people. How do you beam this pleasure? The bracha. Bracha is your beaming device, says Rabbi Ashok. Mind-boggling. He wrote this. He completed the whole Zohar in 1955, so this he completed before 55. These ideas didn't exist. The pleasure was beamed. How? Through the kavanot habracha. And incidentally, this I think you have learned in the classes. Baruch is not blessed art thou. Baruch atah, blessed art thou. And then God's name, blessed art thou. The word Baruch has nothing to do with blessing. Nothing to do with blessing. Bracha is a blessing, not a blessing. It's a device, says the Zohar, Baruch is the code name for Bina. For Bina. What does Baruch mean? I don't know what it means. I do know that it's a code. We all use codes. Banks have to use codes to transfer money. And because nobody knows the code, therefore it's not transferred. Because the letters of that code will transfer the money. How could A, T, X, L, W transfer billions of dollars? Where's the consciousness? It's not even a word. But what's a code? Do you mean because I can read the word, that's the meaning of the word? No. AXTLNZ transfers billions of dollars. We can't even transfer maybe $50 if I haven't got it in the bank. And here's some stupid combination of letters transfers billions of dollars. Because that's a code. It's been so structured that when you put together these few letters, you will beam money. Billions of dollars go through the wires. Also an impossibility. What are you beaming? Money? Physical money? You're beaming consciousness. This man wants to transfer billions of dollars. So he beams through a consciousness. What more is it? And how does he beam it through? Through some letters that nobody can even read. And in fact, he can't read it, but he was instructed that the bank has this code by which you can transfer, beam money somewhere, anywhere in the world. We're living with this. Baruch doesn't mean blessed. Baruch is the code for Bina. For Bina. Ataz is not thou, not you. Do we use those words? Yes. Physical level, if I want to say you, how do I say you? I say ata. What am I talking about? I think I'm talking to you. But if you're not listening to me, am I talking to you? Even if I say the word ata, I'm still not talking to you. When I use the word ata, I'm beaming through a consciousness to you. That's why Hebrew is a powerful language. The trouble is we don't know what the language means. So we're not getting things done. And along comes some crazy Rav and starts putting some words up there on the wall in the synagogue that none of us understand what it means. Letters. What are we doing? What are we doing with these letters? Well, we're doing the same thing the bank does. Maybe we'll even be able to transfer billions of dollars through some cryptic message, like Mem He Shin, Kaf He Tav. Why, if the banks can do it, we can't. As long as we do not change our consciousness, and to understand what I have said this morning, which is what in this Parshat Ekev, and that's why there's so much written here in the Marot HaSulam. All he does is speak. Everything that is referred to in Parshat Ekev is only around this idea of beaming things, beaming consciousness. What is consciousness? Consciousness is energy. Consciousness is energy. It translates into money. If there's a consciousness to transfer billions of dollars, trillions are passed over the wires every day. They're not delivered anymore. They're not delivered. In fact, if there wasn't trust between the banks, one bank would say, I'm sending you $1 billion to put in this man's account. The bank has to trust that the money is there and they're putting it in. The bank trusts. What is he trusting? A consciousness. Nothing more than that. If we look just a little closer to the reality, not to the illusionary reality that we're unfortunately so engulfed with, so wrapped up with. So what is bracha? To take the hana'ah. To take the hana'ah, the reason we're eating, the reason we're drinking, and we make the bracha, is because I am taking a pleasure. I am taking a pleasure, and I have to beam it. After all, you have a pleasure. What happens to most of us? After the pleasure, you've had the second bite of the steak. What happens? Gone. We can't somehow hold on to the pleasures. What is a pleasure? What is a pleasure? A pleasure is a reality because it's not physical. Physicality. Oh, at one time, and strangely enough, in this week's Parshat, God reminds us. But who pays heed? Some miracle happened. God does a lot of miracles. Not us, but God. God does miracles. And he tells us in this week's Parsha that you remember your clothes never wore out. The Jews traveled 40 years in the wilderness and never had to go out and buy clothes. They used the same clothes all the time. I don't know why. They didn't get bored from the clothes. You know why they didn't get bored from their clothes? Why? Because they were not connected to the clothes. They were connected to the consciousness. They were connected, if there was clothes, the physical part. Is that clothes? That's not even the size of an ant. The consciousness of the clothes, you mean? Yeah, they could preserve the consciousness. You know why? Because you can preserve consciousness. How do you preserve consciousness? How do you preserve consciousness? Huh? You beam it up. We don't know yet the process. Every morning we say a bracha malbish harumim. You ask every person today, unless he heard in advance what I'm saying today. Why are you making this bracha? Malbish arumim. God, thank you for. And is there one person in the world really says, God, thank you for clothing the naked? Any of us really feel that it was not Boss or who else are the big designers that gave us the clothes? I mean, is there anybody who says Malbish Harumim, he really means God? Give me a break. Is that true? Of course not. And every morning we say Malbish Harumim. Every bracha, says Rabbi Ashlag, if you have pleasure for something, and you want to retain that pleasure, and by the same token, you will not become bored with it. Why? Time will not permit, but it's so beautiful. Maybe I'll even continue this maybe next week on the subject, because this is the essential feature. We've gotten away because all of us go through so many traumas in our life, so many experiences of chaos in our life, that is there anything else around but that? No. If you look, wherever you look, that's all you can see is chaos. Very little that we're satisfied with. And even a few moments of satisfaction gone with the wind. Gone with the wind. Do you know why? Because we haven't preserved it. Why is it gone with the wind? You eat the first bite of good food, the second one is already gone. But the second bite, not a week later, But as you eat the second bite, already you don't feel the same. It's gone. Why is it gone? It's gone. You don't even taste it. The second one is interrupting the first. Are you talking about seconds? It's all gone. Do we stop for a moment to even think, what's happening here? When you accumulate all of these pleasures, your life is full of pleasure. But you see, we can't physically hold on to it. You know why? Why? Because it doesn't exist physically. That's why you got to buy furniture today, you got to buy furniture tomorrow. That's why if you're enjoying yourself on the beach because you needed a vacation, stay there for a year. Never. Never. Do you know why? Why? I'm bored. That's your answer. I'll be bored. That's your answer. Why? Why? How many of us have thought, why? None of us. Do you know why? Because you don't know how to preserve it. The pleasure, each pleasure. And we are here for that reason. All of these brachot, every bracha that is mentioned is how we can preserve the pleasure. Because that's the reason we are here. If we don't have this consciousness, then you can't keep the pleasure. If you don't know, you can't keep it. I know I'm right, because how many of us can keep the pleasure? Even a vacation, and we go back to the same place. Do we really feel it? It's memories. We even have a word for it. Wonderful memories. Do you enjoy it right now? Enjoy it right now. You know the problem I've got in my office. You're asking me, and I'm trying to go back there, and I see, oh, how wonderful it was. How wonderful it was. Not how wonderful it is now. Why not? Picture yourself on the beach. You had a great time there. Why didn't you say now? It was. You know why? Because we never capture those moments of hana'ah. You know what the brachot are about? To beam it in. You can't keep it. You've got to beam it in. It's a methodology. That's what the Torah is giving us here. A methodology about how, when you come into this world, and the reason we came in here because we were unhappy. You need all the courses in Kabbalah. There's no question. To understand, we've got to remove bread of shame and other features. But what is the objective? So now I know. They want to make a super collider in Texas. And what will we know? We'll know more particles. And then what? Oh, we might even go back to the original Big Bang. And then what? Then what? What's it do for me today, now, when I will already know how it all began? So what? What will that do for me? The answer is zero. The answer is all forms of high tech have for some done nothing. Has it improved the quality of his life? Because now he can speak on the cellular, so he doesn't have to look for a phone? Or people can reach him right away? That could even be a disaster. They call him up and tell him how much money he lost today. The high tech, if you look at the bottom line, and I think in business you must look at the bottom line. What has it done for you? Don't ask that anymore. We don't ask that question. Go, we move, we do, without asking us of ourselves, what do I want from all this? And the answer should be, I've come here, God created me, so I should have the pleasure of His sustenance. The only reason. If you don't believe in this premises, that's also okay. But that's the premise the Ari gave us, which he gleaned out of the Zohar. Lehitiv l'nivra'av. To share of his beneficence. If there's anything in this world that we'll all agree upon, and that's only one thing, we'll all agree upon, that the one thing we do see in this world is the absence of the pleasure of God. That we will all agree. Where do we have it? Every day is filled with traumas or problems. Every single day. But if we can accumulate years of pleasure, and now you have a serious problem. The pleasure was so overwhelmingly removed, that problem. Because what would happen as you hear the problem? You beamed it all back now, right? Years of pleasure, now comes one problem. You wouldn't even entertain the problem. Well, the bank manager said, listen, I don't want to hear about your pleasures. You better bring in the money. Say, look, don't bother me. I'm having such a wonderful time. He says, yeah. You know what might even happen if you keep telling him that? He probably won't call you again. It might even happen. It might happen. And we are normal, sensible human beings. We are normal, sensible human beings. What happens? Im kavanat habracha lebchinet man el hamalchut. Malchut, a code word. What does malchut mean? Malchut is the world that we're referring to, that empty space world. The world of reality. The world that is not infinitely, almost non-existent, like the physical aspect. There's more to this world than the physicality, as we just said. It's not even a pinpoint. That's called the world of Malchut. A code. There's something else. Ask a scientist, what is more in this world? What's his answer? What is more in this world? The universe, empty space. Empty space. In fact, they even say the globe has more water than land. More water than land. Why? So it was. Same feature. Everything is the same. Through this consciousness that you want to raise the pleasure with the channeling, with the beaming instrument, which is called the bracha, olim zeir ampin umalchut labina. Because once it can reach malchut is connected with zeir ampin, and both of them now take your pleasure, your consciousness, and present it to bina. Umikablim sham mochin ukelim shemehem yored ashef lekol olamot. You want to know now how you can preserve it? It'll be there for you every day, day in and day out. It must go through this process. Now, you don't have to believe that this is the process. But it goes up there, and what happens in this process? What happens in this dematerialized process? What happens when the person appears on the other side of the, your own home? There he is again. There he is again. But now, what's happened? He's not one person anymore, is he? If you have 10 television sets in your room, all tuned into the same program, how many of the guy is there? You've cloned 10 people. Is that correct or not? I mean, could he be in more than one place at the same time? Could you be in more than one place at the same time? Oh, we could. Well, some say yes. Okay. All right. That's good. Not all of us are going to say yes. But there he is in front of you, 10 television screens, and there's the guy in 10 on television. He's cloned himself 10 times. No? Well, how did he appear in 10 places at the same time? Not only successive times, but at the same time, there he is. How come? How come? Because there's no problem cloning your pleasure. It's no problem to duplicate and increase. How do you do that? However they're doing it, we're told how we can do it. How we can do it. Then Yored HaShefel L'Kol Ha'olamot, U'Bishvil Zeh, Mahana HaKadosh Baruch Hu Et Ha'adam. Nimsa She'im Adam Neneh V'lo Berech, Arei Hu Gozel Et HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now you're robbing from him. Taking his food away. Taking his food away. I'm stealing God's food. You understand this concept? And that's the reason. Go out and ask people who make blessings. How can you steal from God? Taking from God didn't even say thank you. It's like I go in and take something out of a store. The man says, I wouldn't have mind if, you took it, you need it, but at least say thank you, right? At least say thank you. This is the concept of why we do brachot, and it's not. Because through this process, the process that we establish, the pleasure that we have created, never lasts. Now we're giving the Creator the opportunity to eternalize the pleasure that we have. And when we don't give him this opportunity, not because I didn't say thank you, because I didn't use the beaming process. He cannot, this that he created for me to enjoy, he sees it being dissipated. He sees that pleasure that you did have for that moment, that he knows that he now has to give you through the process of beaming, which I just said, it must go up through Malchut, and then Zeir Anpin and Malchut, come to Bina, and there it receives this eternal vessel that can encapsulate it, and it doesn't deteriorate. It doesn't evaporate. It remains eternally, so he can beam it back to you. Because it's like food. It's like food. Pleasure is like food. If you can't refrigerate it, or you can't do something with it, you got to do something with it. You can't leave food as it is. Everything undergoes what? The process of regeneration. The body. After 20 years, we're on the way down. Everyone is on the way down in health. How do you preserve it? How do you preserve it? Are we talking about the physical? If you can preserve the 99% of yourself, and that's what the prayer is every morning. Some of us are too tired, and some of us, are too lazy. And so one day God will forgive me if I don't pray today. Right? That prayer there is to eternally. I don't want to say materialize, but maybe because then again I'd fall into a trap of the materialization. We're talking about dematerializing it. You've got to dematerialize everything. And now I want to say to preserve everything. Everything. You've set up all your vessels in advance. So whatever happens during the day, you know what you've done. Every pleasure has become eternalized. And ultimately it'll come back to you.